This week's portion, as many of us know, is the whole discussion, the process of bringing of sacrifices in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. Now, sacrifices, as many commentators, Maimonides for one, points out, was not a new concept. Even, of course, we know from the time of Abraham, and even before Abraham, Adam, sacrifices were brought. The concept of bringing something from the living, from the animal, as a sacrifice to a god, or whatever that process was meant to be. But the question, of course, is, as we know, Kabbalistically, we always want to understand the spiritual significance of things. What was the importance? What was the purpose? What is the purpose? More importantly, today, that we don't do the physical act of sacrifice, what is the consciousness that was meant to be awakened, that is meant to be awakened through the sacrifice? So it's interesting. Again, this is a whole other discussion. There's an argument between Nachmanides the Ramban and Maimonides the Rambam what the actual purpose was. Was it just to, because in one opinion, because so many people were worshiping idols and bringing sacrifices to idols, and so Moses and God had the idea, let's have them sacrifice to the one God, and that'll sort of change their mind? Or is there a deeper significance? Maybe Nachmanides, who goes on to a long explanation, that it was meant to bring about a spiritual transformation when the individual who's done something negative, for instance, and he brings a sacrifice and he sees the physical finishing of the animal, that sort of awakens within him the understanding that what I've done, anything negative that I've done, really separated me completely from the light of the Creator. All this is very interesting. But the Maharal, the great Kabbalist, has what I think both beautiful and powerful understanding to the whole concept of sacrifices. And he begins by saying the following. This is from his book, Gvurot Hashem, chapter 69. Just as there is a connection, a unity between the cause of something towards whatever is created or affected by him, father to son, for instance, the father being the cause, the child being the effect. So there is always a connection, the Maharal says, between the cause and the effect. Teacher and student, creator and creation. There is always a both emotional and deep connection between cause and effect, between creator and creation. And that's the reason why the Creator has such a desire. We know it says, and the Rav would often quote this, that more than for instance, it says more than the cow wants to give milk to her calf, more than the calf wants to drink the milk, the cow wants to give it. There's a greater desire from the Creator, in this case the cow to the calf, than there is from the calf to the cow. So there's a greater desire for the Creator to give us light than even we have a desire when we do have a desire to receive. And therefore, the Creator's desire is to always shine down light onto the individual. לכך אחר שציווה השם בעשיית המשכן ולהיות שכינתו ביניהם, after the whole process of creating the tabernacle, and the process of creating the tabernacle, the Maharal is explaining, was an expression of the Creator's desire to be with us. The Creator is saying, it's again a new view of the Mishkan. Most of us understood that the Mishkan is a place that the Israelites were creating where the light of the Creator can come to them. But the Maharal says it was a different beginning, and it was the Creator's revelation of His desire. I really want to be with you. I really want to shine down light and blessings on you. Please create for me a place that I can do that in. And that was the purpose of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan was actually an awakening of an expression of the light of the Creator's desire to be ever flowing to the creations, to the Israelites at that time in the desert, and to us. So after that, Tziva Hashem Yitbarach behakravat hakorban. Then, after the building of the tabernacle, which the Maharal explains was an expression of the great desire that the light of the Creator has, and it's important to always remember this, the great desire that the light of the Creator has to give us blessings and light, then there has to be an awakening from the creation, us, towards the Creator, towards the light of the Creator. So the Maharal is explaining the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle, is an expression of the Creator's desire to be with us. The Creator's desire to be connected to His creation. The concept of sacrifices is the need for the creation, being us, to come back to a connection to our Creator. וכאשר אתה רוצה לעמוד על עיקר הקורבן, and if you want to understand the secret of sacrifices, אין עניין הקורבן, רק דבר זה, the secret of the sacrifices, the purpose of the sacrifices is only one thing. כי כאשר העלול נמצא מן העילה יתברך, we, the Israelites in the desert, and we being the effect, being the creation of the Creator, ken shav el ilato. It's the return of the creation to its creator, the effect to its cause. Ki hanimtzaim en lahem kiyum belo ha'ila. So the consciousness, the Maharal says, what is the consciousness of a sacrifice? Is for the individual bringing the sacrifice, and therefore today we can separate, because we don't have the physical action of sacrifice. If you understand what the consciousness that you're meant to elevate to, it's the clarity of understanding that I have no existence separated from the Creator. I have no existence separated from the Creator. Ein hanimtzaim en lahem kiyum belo ha'ila. The clarity that we have no existence without the light of the Creator. Vehem tluyim bo, and therefore we are 100% dependent on the Creator and our connection to Him. Vezeu hashavat ha'alul el ha'ila. So when we talk about how do you reconnect the effect to the cause, how do you reconnect the creation to the Creator, it's through the consciousness, through the clarity, because we know it's not about a physical sacrifice, it's through the consciousness and the clarity, I have no existence. I have no existence without the total light of the Creator. ולפיכך הקרבת הקורבן אליו יתברך, שהוא יתברך עילת הכל ואליו ישוב הכל. So the concept of sacrifice is for the individual to be doing an action that manifests the consciousness of everything I am, and everything that I have is nothing except for its connection, constant connection to the light of the Creator. And that again to really imprint the consciousness that the creations have nothing and are not separate from the light of the Creator and have no existence separated from the light of the Creator. So the concept of bringing the sacrifices. So what's a sacrifice? The person had to go use his money that he earned, has to buy a cow, has to buy a sheep, has to buy something to bring as a sacrifice. So what the individual might think is his, in this case money, he purchases something, and then and then what happens? Then the sacrifice is burnt. It becomes nothing. So the purpose of this process, and this is probably why the temple was destroyed and sacrifices stopped being brought, because people started thinking it's about the action. But in reality, it was a spiritual meditation that was meant to bring about a change. The person is meant to say, as he's taking his money and he's buying the cow, or whatever he's going to bring as a sacrifice, this me is nothing if it is not totally connected to the light of the Creator. He takes that cow, he burns it. This is what is. Anything that is not of the light of the Creator. There's nothing that exists. And that constant thought process, that constant meditation on this reality was the entire purpose of the sacrifice. ומפני שבמה שהנמצאים שווים אליו, הנה הוא יתברך בלתי חסר דבר, לפיכך נקרא הקרבת הקורבן לחם אישה. So the point is, the purpose of the sacrifice was not for the Creator. It didn't do anything, didn't change anything within the Creator, but rather it was meant as an internal spiritual process for the individual. And to understand, of course, we on this Shabbat are meant to go through this process. So if we wanted to focus, as the Maharal said, we'll read a little bit more, but if we wanted to focus what the consciousness shift, that the concept of sacrifices, which is what this Shabbat is about, where does our mind need to go? So the clarity that nothing that we are, nothing that we have is anything separated from the light of the Creator, and that really our entire life process needs to be this process of bringing it all back to its source. So sometimes you take the whole idea of giving charity or giving maaser. It's the whole, but it's not about the action. It's about the entire shift in consciousness where the individual says there's nothing separated from the light of the Creator. There's nothing separated from the light of the Creator. מפני שהנמצאים כולם בעצמם הם תלויים בו, Again, it's one of these concepts. I'm sure if you ask anybody who's a little bit spiritual, do you know this concept that everything, the fact that you're alive in this second, the fact that you have a penny in your pocket, the fact that you have any joy in your life, all that is only because of the light of the Creator, and separated even for a second from the light of the Creator, it becomes nothing. Of course, we all know that, but if anybody, and we'll come to see, if we really had this consciousness, you'd be able to create miracles in every second. You'd be able to have joy in every second. So it's important to realize that maybe it's a concept that we have somewhere in our mind, but to live it, to actually own this concept, is something that transforms the person's life. And that was the purpose of the teaching and the actual practice of bringing the sacrifices. ואין זה רק לזכות האדם בפועל שלו, שרצון השם יתברך שהנמצאים ישובו אל השם יתברך. It is again to awaken that consciousness, that clarity. The light of the Creator desires for me to return to my source. And everything that I do, whether it's bringing a sacrifice, whether it's giving money, this is all part of the process of me clarifying. And that's why it's so important for all this consciousness to be reinforced in our mind all the time. If not, then there's nothing. And that clarity, because the lie of this physical world is that there's the light of the Creator, and then there are things that can be separated from the light of the Creator. Of course, it's not good. Of course, it doesn't have a long-term blessing. But the fact that there's nothing, that what you're seeing is we talk about it, but it's a complete illusion. If it's in any way separated from the light of the Creator, that's not something that is clear in our mind. That is not something that is clear in our mind. So the whole purpose, and this is a beautiful concept in Maharal, the whole purpose of the sacrifice was to keep reinforcing nothing. If it's not connected, if it's not being brought back to the light of the Creator, then it's nothing. Then it's burning my money down to zero. So literally, and it's an amazing thing. Again, but the Maharal is saying, what was the purpose of bringing the sacrifice? For a person to take a $100 bill of his and rip it up. Why? Because for him to say, what did I think about that $100 bill? That it was in my pocket, that it's mine? In some way separated from the light of the Creator, not the totality of the light of the Creator, it's nothing. It's zero, so I rip it up. So the person takes his money, he buys a cow, he burns the cow. Why? Did you think for a moment that the $100 that you just spent on the cow was yours? It was in any way worth an existence if it was separated from the light of the Creator? Now you can look at there and meditate. No, it's nothing. It's earth. It's nothing if it's in any way separated from the light of the Creator. And it's an amazing understanding. כל עניין הקורבנות להורות כי השם יתברך יחיד בעולם ואפס זולתו. The entire purpose of the process of bringing the sacrifice was to reinforce again and again and again and again in our mind that there's nothing that exists if it is separated from the light of the Creator, and therefore awakening the desire and the consciousness to always bringing things back, and making that I am being brought back all the time to that connection to the light of the Creator, because separated from that there's nothing. There's no existence. I'll share with you something funny. Before I came down here, I was talking to Monica, and Monica asked me what the limud was about. And some of you might, so this is related to another joke that some of you might know, might not, that there was a famous TV show that was called Seinfeld, and when they talked about the show, in the show they asked what is the show about, and they said it's a show about nothing. And that's the way they try to sell it. So if you understand that joke, so when Monica asked me what the limud was about, I told her it's about nothing. So, and that's really what this limud is about. It's the clarity. It's the clarity, because this is what this Shabbat is about. And by the way, this is the secret of Zachor. This is the secret of removing Amalek. Is really coming to the clarity, as the Maharal says, Nechshavim le'efes b'hakol shav elav. That there is nothing that exists that if it is in any way not being brought back to the Creator. Aval b'amitat metziuto hakol shav elav ve'en kan bria klal. That the whole idea that we live in this world of separated things, that there's a light of the Creator and we try, that's a complete illusion. And to break away from that illusion is what this Shabbat is about. To really come, again, and this is meditation, we'll come to see there's 4 or 5 words in the Zohar that really are the meditation that we should be thinking about, certainly this entire week, but really all of our lives, to really bring us back to this clarity. Nothing is worthwhile, nothing exists separated from the light of the Creator. If a person has $100 in his pocket and he or she thinks that in some way that is theirs and separated in any way from the light of the Creator, really what you should do, as they did, take a match and burn that $100 bill and look at it burning and say, no, there is nothing that is separated from the light of the Creator. אבל באמיתת מציאותו הכל שב אליו ואין כאן בריאה כלל, the illusion that we see of a creation that in some way is separated from the light of the Creator is a lie. And that is the ultimate reality, understanding that there is nothing separated from the light of the Creator. And again, in our work, our spiritual work, is to reinforce that consciousness. What I want to speak about now is very much related to this, but it begins to give us an appreciation for the power that we can gain by really living this consciousness, by earning this consciousness. So, it says in the Nefesh HaChaim, the whole idea of what's called the Sitra Achra, the negative side, the cause of all pain, suffering, death, anything that happens of a negative nature in this physical world is coming from that other side. It says in the Tikkunei Zohar, Ilin diyadin beklipin, those who know the secret of the klipot, of the negative side, avdin oma bishman ubahavayot, they can use the power of the names, ubetelin gezerah, and you can annul any decree. If you know the secret of the negative side, then you can annul any negative decree, you can remove any type of negativity. Kivan she'ein hakoach shelahem me'atzmam, because you understand that what we think, and again, this is part of the illusion. So the Sitra Achra, the negative side, the force that causes all pain, suffering, and death, is part of the illusion. Right? The fact that there's a force that can cause pain, that can cause suffering, that can cause disease, all of that is part of the illusion of separation from the light of the Creator. But if you understand, Ki ein od milvado yitbarach, if you really live in the clarity that there is nothing that can exist separated from the light of the Creator, V'lo shum koach v'shum olam v'nivra klal, when you know that, as the Zohar says, ubatlin gezerah, you can annul any decree. So if a person lives in the consciousness that there's no separate $100 bill in my pocket from the light of the Creator, it is all just the light of the Creator, that there is no breath that I take that is not the light of the Creator, that there is no joy that I feel that is not the light of the Creator, there is nothing that is not a direct connection to the light of the Creator. If a person really has that consciousness, then he, as the Tikkunei Zohar says, he can remove any negative decree. And this is a famous story which I mentioned sometimes, but it's important to understand it in this understanding. It says that there was a woman, a witch, who wanted to do damage to Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. It says, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, she didn't like him for whatever reason. She wanted to curse him and bring negativity to him. And she wanted to take some dirt under his chair because that's the way she did her witchcraft. And she was a real witch. It wasn't, like people who think that they have powers. This is actually a witch who had powers to do harm to somebody if she wanted to. Amarla shkuli. And so she was trying to sneak around so he doesn't see her, and then she'd take the dirt, and do that. He got up and he said, listen, don't have to sneak around. Do whatever you want. Take the dirt, do your curses, whatever you want. I'm not worried. So the Nefesh HaChaim asks, when Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says to this woman, I'm not scared of any negativity that you're going to do, did he mean that he was on such a high spiritual level that he was so protected? What did he mean, or what is the secret when Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says to her, do whatever you want, basically talking to the Sitra Achra, talking to the negative side, do whatever you want, I'm not worried about anything that you will do to me. Vadai shelo haya machzik atzmo Rabbi Hanina denafesh zechutei. It cannot be, and it is not, that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said, no, I share so much, and I pray so much, and I'm so connected, I'm not worried. Because nobody can ever say that about themselves. It says, Hen b'kedoshav lo yamin. Even the Creator doesn't say that about somebody. You're so spiritual, you're so connected, I don't have to worry about you. Even the Creator wouldn't say that. So of course, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa isn't saying that about himself, that because I'm so spiritual and I'm so sharing and I'm so connected, I'm not worried. It wasn't that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was saying, I'm so spiritual, I'm so connected, I have nothing to worry about. But rather, as we said, because the reality is that the Sitra Achra, the negative side, the force that causes pain, suffering, death, doesn't really have its own light or its own strength, but rather, in somehow, they receive from the essence of the light of the Creator. ולכן גם רבי חנינא לא שבטח על זכות קדושת תורתו ומעשיו המרובים. So Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, it wasn't that he was depending on all the great work, the spiritual work and light that he had. רק שידע ושיער בנפשו, but the one thing he knew about himself is that he had consciousness. So it wasn't, he was saying, I might be the most negative person in the world. I'm not saying that I have so many actions that I've revealed light and therefore I'm protected. But there's one thing he knew. שזאת האמונה קבועה בליבו לאמיתה. The consciousness we've been talking about, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa had it, because he worked on it. שאין עוד מלבדו יתברך שום כוח כלל. He had the ultimate certainty in all situations, in all times, that there is just the light of the Creator, and everything is always connected to the light of the Creator. Even the things that we think might be separated from the light of the Creator, they do not exist. There is no such thing as an existence that is separated from the light of the Creator. והדביק עצמו בקדושת מחשבתו לבעל הכוחות כולם, and with that consciousness he was always connected to the light of the Creator, because, as we said, because he never saw even though he didn't have $100 in his pocket, if he had $100 in his pocket, he would never have seen that as being separated from the light of the Creator. If he had anything, he would never have seen it as separated from the light of the Creator. He was always machzir davar, he was always returning all of his powers and everything that he had to that connection to the light of the Creator, because he knew ein od milvado, that there are no other forces, no other possible reality of existence in the world that is separated from the light of the Creator. That consciousness is a great gift. And that consciousness, this gift which Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa had, which is what we're talking about on this Shabbat, is something that is gifted to somebody who works on this constantly. And because of that, לכן היה נכון ליבו בטוח בזה. Therefore he was completely certain that he could not be harmed. שלא ישלטו עליו פעולות הכשפים הנמשכים מכוחות המרכבה הטמאה. Because where does the Sitra Achra exist? Where does pain, suffering, death, disease exist? It exists in the illusionary world where people think that there are things separated from the light of the Creator. But if a person's consciousness is that there's no other existence except everything returning always to the light of the Creator, which, as we said, was the work of the Korbanot, the whole purpose of bringing the sacrifice was to reinforce money, energy, nothing exists separated from the light of the Creator. If a person, and this is the ultimate state where Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa got to, then the Sitra Achra can't do any harm to them. The negative side can't do any harm to them, not because they're so spiritual and they have so much light, but because their consciousness, and they live in a realm where the Sitra Achra doesn't exist. The negative side doesn't exist. If the $100 in his pocket doesn't exist, separated from the light of the Creator, then this force of disease or death doesn't exist, separated from the light of the Creator. If it's all the light of the Creator, it can't be doing any harm. If you begin to understand this may be, and I feel uncomfortable saying the same, because almost every limud we talk about one thing and say it's the most important thing, but this seems to be, if not the most important, certainly amongst the most important consciousness and places where we need to be focusing our work. Because this, as Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said about himself, and each of us, the thing is, if we had, and by the way, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was a great Kabbalist, and the work that he did, the study, the prayers, the meditations, where he was on a level maybe most of us can never achieve. But the consciousness of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, we can all achieve. And if not achieve completely, levels of it we certainly can achieve. And that's why it's so beautiful. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa is not, as he explains, he's not saying, I'm protected because I'm a spiritual person and I've revealed so much light, although that was true to some extent, but because of the consciousness. So if we can find a way to focus and work on this consciousness all the time, you grow in levels of protection. You grow in levels of protection. And then the Nefesh HaChaim says the following thing, which is, again, so exciting and hopefully gives us the inspiration, the desire to really work on this. He quotes here from it says in the introduction to the Zohar, this is section 211 in the Hakdamat Sefer Zohar, in the introduction. V'chadinda barnash, when a person comes to the consciousness, when we talk about knowledge, as the Rabbi often reminds us, is not something here, it is something that really is a connection that encompasses the entire being of the individual. But when the individual comes to this consciousness, the kol achad, that's all one, which means that there is only the light of the Creator, and there's nothing separated from the light of the Creator that can exist. Velo yashve peruda, and therefore he doesn't allow the illusion of this world, which seems to be a world of separation, where things exist separate from the light of the Creator. Afilu hahi sitra achra yistalek me'al alma. The negative side has to leave. can't exist within the realm of an individual that has this clarity of consciousness. For the individual, again, the Zohar is talking about here for the world. When enough people in the world come to this consciousness, the sitra achra, the negative side, has to disappear because it doesn't exist. It doesn't have a reality. It only has a reality in the illusion that where unfortunately most of us still reside, but there are things separated from the light of the Creator. That things have an existence. There are certain things that have an existence separated from the light of the Creator. But the Zohar says, powerful words. The person who works on this consciousness. And again, so it's important to understand, if most of us are at a 0, at a 1 in this consciousness, when you get to 4, you've elevated your level of protection that much. When you get to 6, that much. When you get to 10 being the most, then you're at the level of Hanina ben Dosa, and no negativity can touch you. But it's a process that constantly, as this consciousness grows, so too does the protection and the separation that the sitra achra has to take from the individual. When you really work and come to that consciousness that there is nothing separated from the light of the Creator, the negative side has to disappear because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in that realm of consciousness when the individual knows there's nothing separated from the light of the Creator. And therefore he says, V'gam yigzar omer vayakem lo. And so too, the person can create miracles with his words. Lif'ol inyanim v'nisim niflaim. To create great miracles. Kevan shemesha'abed u'medavek toar emunato. Because when the person really attaches this consciousness, therefore he attaches completely to the light of the Creator. And once you're at that level of connection to the light of the Creator, then there is no negativity, and it's all one. And this is the level where he was able to say things, and in 1 second awaken any type of miracle that he wanted. And this, the Nefesh HaChaim says, is one of the most important. If you want a segula, very often people go to Kabbalists because they have a problem and they need help. They want, some magic, some miracle to be given something that can change things for them. This consciousness shift is something every single one of us can do. And this consciousness shift can create all the miracles that we need and can remove any type of negativity that exists within the individual's life. What can we do? I have to tell you, this section that we're going to study from now, I was reading on last Shabbat, and when it came to me, I said, this is something so powerful. I really hope I have the opportunity to share it with the Chevra when I teach. And then I started reading about other things that excited me. I was going to go there, and then when I started reading it all fits both perfectly and beautifully together. And this, again, very, very powerful. So what's something practical we can do? So I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody yesterday who was flying, and they were very nervous. And well, if they had this consciousness, they could certainly draw both protection and the removal of fear. What is the maybe 4 or 5 words, powerful words that we can use as a meditation to remove, first of all, to remove any type of fear, to remove any type of negativity, and to be working towards this reality? So first I want to share a story from the Baal Shem Tov, where he used this meditation. Once the Baal Shem Tov nasa pa'am achat im talmidav bayar, he was traveling, as many of us know, he would travel with some of his students, and he would go to different places. And once he was traveling with the students in a forest, and as many of you know, in Ukraine, these forests are endless, so it's very possible to get very lost. Ubal ha'agala ta'a b'darko. And the man driving the carriage got lost. Velo matzah haderech letzet misham. And he tried one way, the other, hours and hours, they're lost. Hitamek ha'Baal Shem Tov hakadosh bera'ayonav biyichudim ilayim. The Baal Shem Tov started meditating, started concentrating, and we'll see on what. Upitom yatzu min hayar. And in a second, after the Baal Shem Tov started his meditation, they found their way out of the forest. And they immediately found the path and the way to where they needed to get to. והבעל שם טוב הקדוש, and the Baal Shem Tov explained to his students, כי על ידי הייחוד שייחד בעת ההיא, because his consciousness went to this concept, which is that nothing exists, not connected to light of the Creator. נתקשרו ונתחברו כל הברואים יחד, then all creation, when you live on that consciousness, all creation becomes one. ונתייחדו אליו יתברך, and they all become connected to the light of the Creator. וממילא לא היה גבול של מקום מפסיק בעדו. And therefore, the fact that a moment earlier they were lost in the forest and the trees were in their way, if you elevate your consciousness to the concept there is nothing except the light of the Creator, then there can't be a barrier, in this case trees, between you and where you need to get to. Because it's all the light of the Creator and there's no barriers. There's no, in this case the negativity was the barriers. They couldn't find their way out of the forest. So once he was able to elevate his consciousness to this place called the Einod Milvado, that it's all the light of the Creator, then the barriers that existed, in this case the forest, had to be removed, and therefore they immediately found their way out of the forest. And this is the secret of being able to do what's called Kvitzat HaDerech, which means something, a path that takes somebody 5 hours, you can do it in a half hour. The Kabbalists were able to do it, the Baal Shem Tov was able to do it. Through this meditation, everything becomes one, and there are no barriers of time, no barriers of space, no barriers of sitra achra. No barrier can possibly exist. Again, no barrier of space, no barrier of time. Because they have no existence in relation to the light of the Creator. And here it comes to the words, the kula kamei kelachashiv. And the Baal Shem Tov used these very powerful words. And this, if you take one thing out of the limud, it will be these 4 words from the Zohar. So the Zohar, in the introduction to the Zohar, in section 199, it begins in 199, and the section I'm going to read from is from 191. It says in the middle of the paragraph, talking about the light of the Creator and the consciousness to which one needs to connect themselves, v'chola kamei kela chashivin. V'chola kamei kela chashivin. And everything in the face of the light of the Creator are like nothing. V'chola kamei kela chashivin. And everything in space, in relation to the light of the Creator, have no existence. And he quotes, the Zohar quotes from the book of Daniel, it says in the book of Daniel, that all the creations of this world are nothingness separated from the light of the Creator. So, what the Baal Shem Tov was saying, and this is again what I love about this, is that it's both powerful and practical. These 4 words, V'chola kamei kela chashivin, and everything in front of the Creator is like nothing, is like our sacrifice. Right? We spoke about earlier, we began with the Maharal, that the whole purpose of the sacrifice was to instill within the Israelites the idea that anything separate from the light of the Creator might as well be burnt away, and there's nothing but the light of the Creator. And as we learned then further, that when a person is able to live in this consciousness, then no harm can come to them, then they have the ability to create miracles. How do you get there? So this is very practical. Next time you're in a situation that scares you, or next time you're in a situation where there's a barrier, an important barrier. It could be disease, it could be any other type of problem. If you can really get to the place where, again, and I would use these, the words of the beauty of the Zohar is that it doesn't just give us wisdom, it actually gives us the power. So those 4 words in the Zohar, V'chola kamei kela chashivin, which means, and everything in front of the light of the Creator, in regards to the light of the Creator, has no existence, those words have the power to break down all barriers. This is what the Baal Shem Tov used when he got stuck in the forest and there was a barrier of time and space between him and the place he had to get to. This is the meditation. This is the consciousness. So again, you might be experiencing something today, tomorrow, next week, or somebody else might be experiencing something. And what's the solution? The solution is, so a person, let's say, is having a terrible time with another individual. Why? Because he's in the realm of this world. This individual is separated from the light of the Creator, and this individual being separated from the light of the Creator is causing me harm or pain as being separate from the Creator. So you close your eyes, or you take the time to read this section in the Zohar, V'kola kamei kela chashivin, and as you say these words, you remind yourself, this person doesn't exist, I don't even exist, nothing exists separated from the light of the Creator. And if you're really able, and this is the the process, it has to be constant. It's not going to happen the first time you do it and not the second time you do it. And by the way, I think B'ezrat Hashem, most of us at some moments in our spiritual lives have actually felt this reality, right? But even if you have or if you haven't, the way to make this constant is everything that happens. If something happens that's disappointing, something happens that's upsetting, really take the time to come to the consciousness. There's nothing except the light of the Creator. This person, what I think he exists, he or she exists separate from the light of the Creator and causing me pain, separate from the light of the Creator. Nothing exists except the light of the Creator. And I return everything towards the light of the Creator. And that consciousness removes barriers, great barriers, small barriers. And that consciousness, as we learned before, gives us the ability to really create miracles. Because once you're in the realm, what breaks down the barriers of time and space, right? So this, I'll bring one more story. The great Kabbalist, many of you have heard of Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac of Kamarna, said, Pa'al pa'am achat bekoach yichud, with this meditation, lerapot chole shaya kvar begeder shchiv mera. There was a person who wasn't just sick. This person was not just dying. This person was, as they say, in the last moments of life. And the Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac of Kamarna, using this meditation, was able to bring this person back to life. And this person became healed. Why? Because where's the disease? Even the death that is encroaching on this individual 2 seconds away. Where's that coming from? It's coming from the realm of separation, the realm of sitracha. The fact that this person is sick and dying, separated from the light of the Creator. But it's Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac of Kamarna, and he was able to elevate himself and his surrounding area. And it said he gifted this consciousness, the light of this consciousness to the dying person. Then of course the barrier of death, the barrier of disease has to go away. This is the beginning of the understanding of what this Shabbat is about, and it's also what the secret of Zachor, the secret of removal of Amalek. So, as I said, this understanding is a very exciting, hopefully an inspiring consciousness, but one that you have to earn. You have to work in it all the time, And how grateful should we be to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that he gave us the 4 words that we can use in every situation to begin the process of really bringing everything back to the light of the Creator. And therefore removing all the barriers that exist, all the barriers that we think exist as separated and that cause pain, suffering, death, and disease. Nothing exists separate from the light of the Creator. And those 4 words are more important. The consciousness awakened by those words removes all barriers.